Imagine looking down at your phone right now. You have, I don't know, maybe 412 unread emails just waiting for you.
Which is a total nightmare. Just the worst feeling.
Right. It's that familiar heavy pit in your stomach. It's this massive backlog of, vendor negotiations, internal fire drills, client demands, maybe some calendar conflicts.
All of it just piling up.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Now, I want you to imagine a world where the concept of an inbox it doesn't even exist anymore.
Yeah, completely gone.
You don't open an app, you don't scroll through subject lines. Instead, while you were, say, walking your dog this morning, your system completely handled, negotiated, and resolved all 412 of those issues.
Autonomously.
Welcome to the Deep Dive. Our mission today is to explore this fundamental, just massive architectural shift in how humans interact with technology. We are mapping out the exact blueprints of how your daily workflow is about to completely transform.
Because we're crossing this huge threshold right now. We're moving from a paradigm where humans essentially manage screens to a reality where humans orchestrate invisible systems.
Which is a huge distinction.
It is. I mean, for decades, the burden of translation has been entirely on us. We had to learn how to speak computer, right?
Yeah, like learning where to click, how to drag things around.
Exactly. We had to format our intent into incredibly rigid software silos. But the shift we are diving into today, it just completely inverts that dynamic.
And the implications of that inversion are honestly massive. So whether you're a tech enthusiast who is actively building these tools or an executive who is just overwhelmed by the sheer velocity of communication.
Or honestly, just someone listening to this because you were exhausted from staring at glowing glass rectangles all day long.
Right. Whoever you are, this transition directly impacts you. Because right now, you are an operator. You operate a machine. But by the end of this deep dive, you'll understand how you are stepping into the role of an orchestrator.
An orchestrator of invisible systems.
Yes. And we are pulling from an incredible stack of sources today. We've got these deep, really profound essays on the transition to ambient intelligence powered by Agentic AI.
Fascinating stuff.
Really is. And also a super granular look at how tools, like Whisper specifically, are turning voice into this pure execution engine, which is effectively killing the traditional email inbox.
Yeah, the death of the inbox.
But before we get to the death of the inbox, we need to completely dismantle a massive fallacy about how we actually got here. We have to talk about the illusion of linear evolution.
This is so important because the standard narrative of computing, it feels very neat and tidy. It's almost like a relay race.
Right, like we passed the baton.
Exactly. So people think we started with the graphical user interface, the GUI, so windows, mice, drop-down menus. And then, supposedly, the GUI handed the baton to touchscreens.
The smartphones and the tablets.
Right. And now, the popular narrative just assumes touch is handing the baton to voice. It paints this picture of a ladder we're climbing where the newest interface just, cannibalizes and replaces the old one.
Which is incredibly misleading. I mean, I look at the tech landscape right now, and everyone is trying to force this one-size-fits-all solution.
Constantly.
Every few years, some company declares that screens are dead and everything is going to be voice, or that keyboards are dead and everything will be spatial.
Yeah, the grand declarations.
But if we actually break down the underlying architecture of these three paradigms, UI, touch, and voice, it becomes incredibly obvious why none of them can exist in a vacuum. Let's start with the GUI.
Okay, yeah.
When we talk about a desktop environment, we are talking about the architecture of precision.
Pure precision. The GUI is arguably the most information-dense interface we have ever created. I mean, think about it. If you are building a multivariable financial model...
Or scrubbing through a timeline to edit a feature film.
Right, or designing a 3D architectural rendering. For those things, you require absolute pixel-perfect control. You need overlapping windows, you need complex drop-down hierarchies, and the ability to process massive amounts of visual data all at the same time.
You can't do that with just your voice.
No, mathematically impossible. A mouse and a keyboard provide a level of granular manipulation that you just can't get with a finger or a microphone.
But the architecture of precision, the GUI, it comes with a massive physical tax. It chains you to a desk.
It literally tethers you.
You are physically tethered to a workstation, your posture is locked in, and your attention is entirely consumed by that monitor. You are completely immobile.
Which, if you think about it, is the exact constraint that touch was designed to solve.
Right, the iPhone moment.
Exactly. Touch revolutionized computing because it compressed human intent into physical motion. swiping, pinching, tapping. It introduced this tactile relationship with data that finally removed the abstraction of a mouse pointer.
You're actually touching the data.
Yes. And most importantly, it decoupled computing from the desk. It finally brought the interface out into the physical world.
But touch requires a profound compromise. You are trading spatial density for mobility, because the moment you try to navigate an incredibly dense database on a 6-inch slab of glass, the system just falls apart.
Oh, completely. The human thumb is simply too blunt an instrument.
Way too blunt. And the screen is too small to maintain the cognitive map you need for complex workflows. So it's brilliant for consumption, right?
Yeah.
And quick triage. But it introduces massive friction the second you need to do deep generative work.
And that specific friction is what drove the industry toward voice. Voice was heralded as this ultimate liberation.
The final frontier.
Right, because it completely removes the need for screens or hands or even physical proximity to a device. You can command technology while driving at 70 miles an hour.
Or while you're carrying a bunch of groceries.
Or walking through a park.
Yeah.
It allows computing to happen in parallel with the physical human experience.
Yet voice has a fatal flaw when it comes to visual or spatial tasks.
Mm-hmm.
The essays we're looking at call it sculpting with air, which is just a perfect analogy.
It really is. Trying to use voice for precision is maddening.
Just imagine trying to format a slide deck using only a microphone. You'd be saying, move that image slightly to the left. No, a little more. Now make the font bolder, but not too bold. Change the shade of blue to something slightly cooler.
It's absolute madness.
It's impossible. The cognitive load required to articulate a spatial command verbally is infinitely higher than just, reaching out and moving it yourself.
We can actually look at this through the lens of a commercial kitchen. I love this analogy from the sources.
Yeah, let's break that down.
So the GUI, your mouse and keyboard, that is the precision chef's knife. It's sharp, it's exacting, and it's purpose-built for detailed execution.
You wouldn't use anything else to chop an onion.
Exactly. Now, touch is the baker's hands. It's physically kneading and shaping the dough, relying heavily on tactile feedback.
Makes sense.
And voice is standing at the pass and shouting an order to the sous chef across a really loud room.
I want to pull on that kitchen analogy for a second, because shouting to a sous chef actually highlights the core problem with legacy voice assistants.
Siri, Alexa, all of those.
Right. Because if you shout an order to a sous chef who doesn't know the menu, doesn't know where the ingredients are, and doesn't understand your shorthand, you aren't saving any time. You are just creating chaos.
You're micromanaging.
You have to explain every single step. Go to the fridge, get the butter, bring it here, unwrap it. That is exactly what using early voice technology felt like. And honestly, you certainly wouldn't throw away your chef's knife just because you hired a sous chef.
No, of course not.
You need all of those tools operating in tandem to actually run a kitchen.
And this highlights the historical failure of the tech industry. They have been forcing the user to adapt to the limitations of a single tool. We had to learn this robotic, hyper-specific syntax just to get a smart speaker to set a timer without it, pulling up a Wikipedia article instead.
Sorry, I didn't quite get that.
Exactly. So the structural breakthrough we are looking at now happens when we abandon the relay race entirely. The future is not voice replacing touch or touch replacing GI.
It's all of them.
It's their seamless integration.
But how do we actually achieve that integration? Because if we're keeping the knife, the hands, and the voice commands, how do they interact without creating this fragmented, clunky user experience?
That's the billion-dollar question.
Because right now, if I want to switch from my laptop to my phone and then to my smart speaker, I am the one manually carrying the context across those devices. I literally have to copy a link, email it to myself, open it on my phone, and then maybe read it out loud.
It's exhausting.
Mm-hmm.
But the bridge between those silos is what we call the orchestrator. This is the transition from passive software to agentic artificial intelligence.
Okay, let's define that.
To understand this, we really have to look at how software has operated since the literal dawn of computing. Traditional software, no matter how sophisticated it seems, shares one underlying trait. It waits.
Right, it's passive.
It's a completely passive instrument.
Okay.
It sits there with a blinking cursor, waiting for a direct, explicitly formatted command from you. It only executes the exact sequence of steps you initiate.
It's entirely deterministic. Like, if I don't physically click the export button, the file does not export.
Exactly. But agentic AI represents a massive shift to active software. An agent does not just respond. It plans, it reasons, it executes, and it iterates.
It thinks.
Basically, yeah.
Uh,
It possesses the capability to understand a high-level goal, break that goal down into a sequence of necessary steps, interact with various software tools to accomplish those steps, and correct itself if it encounters an error along the way.
Without you having to hold its hand.
Right, all with minimal human supervision.
Let's ground this in a highly specific scenario because the mechanics of how this works are just fascinating. Imagine you are sitting at a coffee shop and you're looking at a dense financial model on your laptop.
Classic GY environment.
Right. Charts, historical projections, raw data sets. You are deep in GUI territory. You reach out and pinch the trackpad to zoom in on a specific anomaly in a trend line. That is touch. Then, without taking your eyes off the screen, you just speak. You say, Agent, pull the latest sales data from our CRM, run a regression analysis against this trend line, and draft an email to the executive team summarizing the top 3 variances.
The true innovation in that scenario is what is absent. There is zero mode switching.
None.
Think about the mechanical steps required to do that today, right now. You would have to open a new browser tab.
And wait for it to load.
You'd navigate to the CRM. You would authenticate with two-factor. You would run a specific query, export a CSV file, import that CSV into your statistical analysis tool, run the regression, interpret the data yourself, open your email client, compose a message, and manually type out the insights.
It's a massive cognitive task, so you're just managing the friction between the applications.
But in the agentic model, the interface essentially dissolves.
How does it dissolve exactly?
It dissolves because the agentic AI operates as a continuous context layer sitting above the individual applications. It uses cross-application API calls to move data seamlessly behind the scenes.
So it's talking to the apps for you.
Exactly. You provided the intent, and the agent orchestrated the execution across GUI, touch, and voice simultaneously. It acts as a collaborator that actually understands your localized context.
See, I have a massive structural question here. Let me push back. Because it sounds incredible, right? But the technical reality of executing that feels overwhelmingly complex.
It is complex.
How does the system differentiate between me providing a command to it versus me just, talking on the phone to someone else while looking at my screen? How does it know when I want to engage deeply with a visual interface versus when I want it to just go run a background process?
It's a fair question.
If I don't click a button that says voice mode activated, isn't the system just guessing my intent?
That ambiguity is arguably the hardest engineering challenge in human-computer interaction right now. Solving it requires moving way beyond simple voice recognition into what is called contextual awareness.
Okay, contextual awareness.
Which powers what the authors of our sources call the seamless trifecta. The system does not need to guess your intent. It calculates it by literally reading your physical environment. The environment.
Right. The underlying logic assigns specific roles to the interfaces based on natural human behavior. So, voice is optimal for initiation and high-level direction. Touch is optimal for quick adjustments and spatial interaction. And UI is optimal for deep focus and complex visualization.
So the system is constantly running like a localized sensor fusion matrix.
Precisely. The magic lies entirely in the transitions, the moments the user does not perceive. To achieve this, your devices are continuously processing a stream of telemetry.
Telemetry from there.
Everywhere. It pulls data from the accelerometer and gyroscope in your phone or smartwatch. It asks, are you in motion or stationary? It utilizes microphone arrays to determine acoustic environments. Are you in a quiet room or a crowded street?
It leverages gaze tracking and proximity sensors. Are you looking at a screen or is the device in your pocket? It even analyzes the semantic complexity of your request. Is the task exploratory and open-ended, or does it require strict precision?
Okay, let's map that sensor fusion onto a real-world example so we can actually see how the transitions function. Take a scenario from the sources where you are completely untethered. You are walking through a park on a sunny afternoon.
Beautiful day.
Right, your phone is in your pocket, you are wearing earbuds, you aren't looking at a screen at all, you just simply speak into the ambient environment. Start my weekly content workflow.
Okay, so in a legacy paradigm, that command triggers an immediate error state. A traditional voice assistant operates on rigid syntax trees. It parses the words, searches its database for a pre-programmed action linked to weekly content workflow, finds nothing, and defaults to a web search.
Right, it gives you that infuriating response. Here's some web results for a weekly content workflow.
Which is useless, because it lacks any situational memory.
But an agentic system operates on a localized vector database of your historical actions. It knows your habits.
It knows what tools you use to create content, who
Yeah.
you send it to, and what time of day you usually do it. So within seconds of you issuing that vague command, the agent autonomously initiates a complex chain of thought.
All while you're just walking.
Yep. It pings your calendar API to review your upcoming schedule. It queries your social platform analytics to evaluate yesterday's engagement metrics. Based on that data, it utilizes a large language model to draft multiple social media posts tailored specifically to the tone of each platform.
Okay, that's already a ton of work.
But it keeps going. It interfaces with an image generation model to create accompanying visuals. It stages those posts in your scheduling software. And finally, it compiles a summary report.
And crucially, it executes that entire pipeline while you are still just walking through the park enjoying the sun. But, human intent is rarely that linear.
No, we change our minds constantly.
Right. During that walk, you might realize you want to check its work. So you pull your phone out of your pocket.
The moment you do that, the seamless trifecta engages. The system sensors detect the shift in elevation and the activation of the display. It tracks your gaze. It instantly transitions from a purely ambient execution mode into a visual GUI.
It knows I'm looking now.
It understands that your physical context has changed, so it surfaces the drafted posts directly onto the screen you are now looking at.
Okay, so then I use touch. I see a headline on the screen, tap it, and manually type a different word because I want, a highly specific nuance.
And then you drop the phone back into your pocket.
Just put it away.
The gyroscope registers the movement, the screen goes dark, and the system seamlessly hands the context back to the voice layer. You say, "Looks good," send the summary to the team, and the workflow is complete.
It's like magic.
The interface dynamically adapts in real time, taking the shape of whatever physical constraints you present it with.
It fundamentally shifts where a human cognitive load is spent. As a user, I am no longer managing the friction of the tools. I am not thinking, okay, first I need to open the analytics dashboard, then authenticate, export a CSV, open my spreadsheet, format the columns.
It's exhausting just saying it.
It is. The mechanical burden is entirely offloaded. I am only managing my strategic intent.
And when you remove the mechanical burden, you free up massive amounts of cognitive space. And that introduces a profound philosophical shift in how we build technology.
Yeah.
We are moving toward an era where freedom is actually considered the ultimate feature.
Let's expand on that, because for the last 40 years, computing progress was measured in raw power. We optimized for gigahertz, for RAM, for processing speed, for screen resolution.
Faster, better, stronger.
Exactly. But this new architectural generation optimizes for the liberation of the user. It is freedom from the physical desk. It is freedom from the glowing screen. Work no longer demands human stillness.
We are seeing entirely new behavioral patterns emerge as a result. Work is completely decoupling from physical locations. We're looking at a reality where a founder can negotiate and close a complex, multi-million-dollar acquisition while hiking on a nature trail.
Incredible.
A parent can coordinate a global marketing campaign while physically cooking dinner, their hands completely covered in flour. An executive can review and refine intricate strategy decks mid-run, vocalizing their insights into an ambient layer that organizes and applies them to a document they aren't even looking at.
The computer basically ceases to be a distinct physical destination. It is no longer a place you go to work. It becomes ambient intelligence.
It's just around you.
It is an environmental layer that walks beside you.
And this fundamentally rewrites that evolutionary formula we discussed earlier. It is no longer GUI transitioning to touch, transitioning to voice.
The relay race is over.
It's over. The terminal formula is GUI plus touch plus voice, integrated into a unified layer, which ultimately becomes invisible.
But reaching that state of invisibility is not simple. It is currently triggering an absolute arms race among the largest tech platforms on the planet. Building a system that actually feels ambient requires mastering 3 highly specific, incredibly difficult technological dimensions.
Extremely difficult.
Let's dig into those dimensions because they explain why true ambient intelligence has been so elusive for so long. Dimension number 1 is natural, low-friction voice understanding, and we really have to differentiate this from simple transcription.
Yeah, we have to be clear here. Transcription is a solved problem. Turning audio waves into text on a screen is easy. The massive hurdle is intent parsing and semantic comprehension, especially when dealing with human disfluencies.
Right.
Because humans do not speak in perfectly structured, grammatically correct command prompts. We stutter, We change our minds mid-sentence. We use heavy contextual referencing.
Think about how you actually talk to a colleague at work. You'd say something like, actually, wait, no, go back to the previous section and make that part sound a bit more aggressive. But keep the formatting from the other document.
A legacy system fails completely there.
It has no idea what you mean.
It doesn't know what that part, a bit more aggressive, or the other document means. Achieving natural voice understanding requires the model to maintain a persistent rolling context window of your entire workflow so it can resolve those ambiguous pronouns instantly without latency.
Which feeds directly into dimension number 2, true agentic capability.
Yes, this is the leap from a system that reacts to a system that plans. True agentic capability requires a model to engage in chain-of-thought reasoning.
Chain of thought.
Exactly. If you give an agent a vague directive like, plan a client dinner for next Tuesday, it must autonomously construct a multi-step execution graph. It has to know to query the CRM for the client's dietary restrictions, cross-reference both of your calendars for overlapping free time.
Interface with a restaurant reservation API to find a highly rated venue that actually accommodates those restrictions.
Draft a personalized invitation, and crucially, it must possess self-correcting prompt loops.
And that right there is the defining feature of an agent, because if it hits an API limit, or if the chosen restaurant is fully booked, it cannot just throw a fatal error code and alert the user, sorry, I couldn't do it.
No, it has to reason its way to an alternative solution. It evaluates the trade-offs and executes the backup plan autonomously.
And finally, we have dimension number 3, seamless multimodal orchestration.
Which we touched on with the sensor fusion matrix. This is the ability to preserve state and context across completely different hardware ecosystems without introducing any cognitive overhead for the user.
Most technology companies today might excel at one of these dimensions. A rare few are beginning to manage 2.
But the winner of this architectural race will be the platform that integrates all 3 so deeply that the user literally forgets the operating system even exists. The technology becomes a silent partner that listens, acts, and creates, demanding nothing but your intent in return.
However, I feel like discussing this in the context of, walking in parks and booking dinners makes it sound incredibly utopian.
A little too perfect.
Right. To truly understand the disruptive power of this architecture, we have to apply it to the most entrenched, chaotic, and high-friction environment in the modern enterprise. We have to look at what happens to the email inbox.
The inbox is the ultimate stress test.
It really is. Email has survived every single technological revolution of the last 30 years. But when we view it through the lens of ambient intelligence, email is exposed as a massive, glaring relic. The most profound realization we found when diving into these architectures is that the future of email is not a smarter sorting algorithm.
It's not a cleaner user interface either.
No. The future is the complete eradication of the inbox altogether.
To grasp why the inbox must die, we really have to analyze its foundational architecture. Email was designed in an era defined by physical keyboards and static monitors.
The 90s, basically.
Right. It is built on a mechanical assumption that communication must be manual, linear, and inherently slow. The workflow is entirely message-centric. You open a portal, you receive raw, unfiltered information, you manually read it to decipher the intent, you type a bespoke reply, and you hit send.
The cognitive burden of triage is entirely on the human. You are essentially acting as a human router for data packets.
That's a great way to put it.
But agentic AI destroys that model by shifting the paradigm from message-centric to outcome-centric.
And that distinction is the fulcrum of this entire transformation. In a legacy message-centric model, you receive an email from a partner with 3 dense PDF attachments and a brief note saying, please review the revised terms.
We've all gotten that email.
The software has successfully delivered the mail and its job is done. Now your workflow stops and the manual labor begins. But in an outcome-centric model, the agent intercepts the communication before it ever reaches human awareness.
Okay, so the agent catches the data packet. What is the actual mechanism of intervention there?
The agent initiates an autonomous workflow. It extracts the text from the attached PDFs. It runs a semantic analysis against the original contract terms stored in your company's vector database. It identifies the specific variances between the documents.
Wow.
It cross-references those variances against your legal department's predefined risk thresholds. It generates a summary of the strategic implications of accepting those changes, and it drafts a comprehensive counterproposal.
So by the time I actually engage with the situation, I am not reading an email at all.
Precisely. You are reviewing an orchestrated decision. The raw, chaotic input of the email has been transmuted into a processed, contextualized, action-ready artifact.
This completely breaks the scarcity model that legacy software relies on. The traditional inbox is just a queue, and it assumes that human attention is the primary bottleneck holding up that queue. You have to manually sift through the noise to find the signal.
Which takes hours.
But the architecture replacing the inbox eliminates the queue entirely, replacing it with three distinct intelligent layers. Let's examine those layers.
Okay, so the first layer is the priority stream. This is a highly curated, low-volume channel reserved exclusively for decisions that genuinely require human judgment, strategic empathy, or final authorization. It is the top 1% of your communications.
So really important stuff.
Exactly. Then the second layer is the background layer.
So if the priority stream is the top 1%, the background layer is basically the engine room handling the rest.
Exactly. The background layer is an invisible, continuous log of routine tasks, scheduling conflicts, vendor updates, and standard inquiries that your agents have already negotiated and resolved autonomously.
I never even see them.
You never saw the inbound messages, and you never saw the outbound replies. You only see the outcomes reflected in your updated calendar or your CRM.
That is wild.
And finally, the third layer is the memory layer.
The memory layer is crucial for trust, I would think. Because if the system is doing all this work in the background, there has to be a verifiable ledger. The memory layer indexes every single communication, human or agent generated, turning it into a massive, searchable, context-aware graph.
Exactly.
I want to use an analogy here because it highlights the transition from manual labor to orchestration perfectly. Managing a legacy email inbox is exactly like walking into a massive grocery store.
Oh, I like this.
You have to navigate the aisles, hunt for the raw ingredients, put them in your cart, haul them home, wash the vegetables, chop the meat, stand over a hot stove cooking, and finally plate the food.
The human is responsible for the entire supply chain of the meal.
Right, you do everything. But outcome-centric agentic email is like hiring a world-class private chef. This chef uses retrieval-augmented generation, meaning they have access to a database of every meal you have ever eaten, every flavor profile you prefer, and every dietary restriction you have.
They know exactly what you want.
They acquire the ingredients silently, they cook the entire meal perfectly, they plate it beautifully, and all they do is bring you a spoon and ask you to taste the sauce to see if it needs a pinch of salt before they serve it to your guests. You are elevated from the prep cook doing the manual labor to the executive taster providing the final strategic direction.
It is a perfect encapsulation of this shift in value. The mechanical execution is commoditized. The human judgment becomes the premium asset.
But practically speaking, this introduces a massive interface problem. Because if I am the executive taster, how do I actually interact with this digital chef?
Right. Where's the kitchen?
If the inbox is dead, and I literally do not have a list of subject lines to scroll through, how do I know what decisions I'm supposed to be reviewing? Where is the interface?
This is where we loop back to the seamless trifecta, and specifically the role of voice as the primary command interface, unlocked by advanced edge processing platforms like Whisper.
Voice becomes the nervous system of outcome-centric work, and we have to acknowledge that typing is inherently a legacy constraint.
It really is.
It is brutally slow. Even the fastest typists cannot operate at the speed of natural human thought. It creates an artificial bottleneck between intention and execution.
Let's look at the driving scenario from our architectural breakdown to see how an inbox-free interface functions in reality. You are behind the wheel of a car, merging onto a highway. You are visually and physically occupied.
In the old world, your productivity is zero. You cannot safely or legally look at a screen or touch a keyboard.
But in the ambient world, you simply speak into the cabin. What requires my attention right now?
The agent does not read you a list of chronological subject lines. It does not say, you have an email from John, an email from Sarah, and a newsletter.
No, it synthesizes the priority stream. It replies, you have 3 pending decisions: a contract revision regarding liability caps from legal, a partnership proposal awaiting budget approval, and a Tier 1 customer escalation regarding a shipping delay. Notice that the system categorized the outcomes, not the raw messages.
You then provide intent. Summarize the changes to the liability caps. The agent delivers the specific data points verbally. And then you provide the human judgment, the pinch of salt. Approve the contract if the liability is capped at last year's terms. If they raise the cap, push back with our standard indemnification clause.
And you are done. The system translates that single vocal directive into a complex workflow. It drafts the appropriate legal response, attaches the necessary documentation, sends the communication, and updates the project tracker.
Just from talking in the car.
There is zero typing. There is no hunting for the right email thread. The entire process is compressed into a simple formula. Conversation leads to decision, which leads to execution.
I am going to challenge this again, though, with the sculpting with air problem. Because that driving scenario works perfectly for binary decisions, approve or deny. But what if the partnership proposal requires deep, nuanced structural rewriting?
Right.
What if I need to move paragraphs around and change the financial projections? I cannot do that verbally while merging onto a highway.
Which is precisely why the architecture insists that voice does not kill screens. This is where the multimodal handoff is critical. The GUI is intentionally summoned only when visual context and spatial manipulation become vital to the outcome.
So I finish my drive, I arrive at my destination and sit down. I need to physically see the proposal.
You open your tablet or laptop. The agent is already aware of your new physical context. It seamlessly hands off the state of your workflow. The screen does not show you an email client. It shows you the raw proposal document itself.
Ready to edit.
But the agent has already pre-processed it. It has highlighted the specific financial sections that require your attention. It has generated suggested edits in line based on your previous conversations. It has placed visual flags next to potential risks.
So I lean in and tap the screen to accept a financial change that is touch. I glance at a flagged paragraph that sounds too aggressive and say aloud, rewrite this section to sound more collaborative and empathetic. That is voice. I use the trackpad to drag a chart to a new page. That is GUI. The interfaces dynamically assemble around my intent in real time.
And this reveals a massive, almost jarring conceptual leap. When you operate this way, email completely ceases to be a medium for human-to-human communication.
See, this is the part that fundamentally breaks our current mental models. Email stops being a place where people talk to each other, and it becomes an execution infrastructure. It becomes a system of workflow triggers.
Consider how a machine views an inbound message. It is not a letter to be read. It is an event that initiates a sequence of actions.
Let's map out these triggers because it illustrates the sheer scale of the automation. Say a vendor sends an email with a new pricing tier. In the old world, you read it, panic, and forward it to finance.
Right.
In the agentic world, that inbound email is a trigger. It automatically initiates a contract analysis workflow, pulls historical pricing data, runs a market comparison, and generates a dashboard showing the budget impact.
A customer sends a frustrated email about a bug. That triggers a sentiment analysis workflow, auto-generates a suggested empathetic response, creates a ticket in the engineering database, and simultaneously triggers an internal escalation workflow to the product manager, appending the user's historical data.
An internal update from your manager triggers a workflow that extracts the key deliverables, aligns them with your calendar, identifies conflicting deadlines, and sets up a progress tracking dashboard. The email itself is literally just the starting gun for the agent to go do real work across your software stack.
Which logically leads to a fairly startling realization. If the inbound emails are just workflow triggers, and the agent is the entity doing the execution, running the analysis, and drafting the responses.
Who is actually writing the emails to other people? Are we rapidly approaching a reality where my autonomous bot is just emailing your autonomous bot, negotiating terms, while you and I are completely oblivious, just occasionally nodding our heads at summary dashboards?
In a structural sense, yes. The architecture guarantees that the vast majority of routine correspondence will be written, negotiated, and handled entirely autonomously by AI agents communicating with other AI agents.
But we have to make a crucial distinction here. When people hear auto-reply, they think of those terrible, shallow, out-of-office templates. Thanks for your message. Your business is important to us. I will get back to you soon.
That is static automation. It's lifeless. We are talking about autonomous correspondence that is deeply contextual and highly personalized. These agents will possess a semantic understanding of your specific tone of voice. They will understand your strategic priorities.
They sound like you.
They will have the memory capacity to maintain context over a complex business relationship that spans years, remembering a casual preference a client mentioned 3 contracts ago, and weaving that empathy into the negotiation.
Which introduces the fascinating concept of asymmetry. We are talking about the massive scalability of your specific voice and intent.
In the current paradigm, your ability to communicate is fundamentally bottlenecked by biology and physics. It is limited by how fast your fingers can hit keys and how many waking hours you have in a day. You are one node in the network.
You can only do so much.
But when you are augmented by agents, Your intent, your strategic direction, and your negotiating parameters can scale infinitely. One single human can manage communication and execution at the volume of an entire department. You act with the output capacity of 10 or 50 or 100 people.
I have to jump in here and throw a massive red flag on the play. This is where the utopian vision crashes into corporate reality. If an AI agent is autonomously negotiating my vendor contracts or responding to an incredibly sensitive, angry client, how on earth do I trust it not to completely destroy my reputation?
It's the biggest question right now.
What if it hallucinates a legal precedent? What if it makes a massive, legally binding financial error because it misunderstood the nuance of a sarcastic email? The liability seems catastrophic.
That is the defining hurdle of the ambient era. It is known as the trust layer, and it is the single biggest engineering and cultural challenge to realizing an outcome-centric future. The anxiety you are describing stems from the fact that in this new architecture, you are no longer delegating discrete tasks. You aren't asking the computer to run a spell check. You are delegating human judgment.
And delegating judgment to a statistical probability model requires ironclad guardrails.
Absolutely. A system operating at this level of autonomy must be built on a foundation of absolute transparency and deterministic control. The architecture demands three essential guardrails to establish that trust.
Let's hear them.
First, deterministic boundaries on autonomy. The system cannot be a black box that decides what it wants to do. It must have hard-coded parameters dictating exactly what dollar amounts, what client tiers, or what specific legal clauses it is authorized to approve autonomously, and what absolute thresholds mandate it to halt and surface the decision to a human.
Like, if the contract is under $10,000, execute it. If it is over $10,000, draft it but require my biometric approval before sending.
Exactly. Second, transparent reasoning trees. The system cannot just present you with a finished response and ask for a blind signature. It must be able to instantly explain the underlying logic of its generation. It has to show its work.
Why did you do this?
Right. It should say, I offered a 10% discount in this draft because my analysis shows this client's renewal is coming up in 30 days and their platform usage has dropped by 40%, indicating a high churn risk.
You need to be able to audit the agent's logic, not just its output. And the third guardrail.
Frictionless override mechanisms. The human in the loop cannot be a cumbersome afterthought. If you see the agent's draft and realize it missed the emotional subtext of the client's message, you must be able to instantly grab the steering wheel back. You step in, provide the human empathy or the strategic pivot the AI couldn't mathematically foresee, and send it yourself.
If a company can successfully engineer that trust layer, if they can implement those guardrails so effectively that employees feel comfortable taking their hands off the wheel, the competitive advantage they unlock is staggering.
It creates a structural asymmetry in the market that simply cannot be matched by throwing more human labor at the problem. Organizations that fully adopt ambient intelligence and agentic workflows gain unimaginable speed. Complex, multi-stakeholder decisions that used to require days of asynchronous back-and-forth email threads are processed, analyzed, and resolved in minutes.
They gain infinite scale. They can exponentially increase their communication volume, their vendor negotiations, and their customer touchpoints without adding a single unit of human headcount.
And they gain total consistency, ensuring every outbound message from every agent aligns perfectly with the overarching corporate strategy.
But the true value, the ultimate advantage, is focus. By eradicating the inbox and automating the friction of coordination, human beings are finally freed to spend their finite cognitive energy on high-leverage, deep strategic thinking. Email is transformed from a soul-crushing productivity drain into a massive, invisible force multiplier.
Which brings us to the terminal conclusion of this entire technological arc. We started by tracking the evolution of interfaces, from the tethered precision of the GUI to the tactile mobility of touch, to the unconstrained freedom of voice. We saw how those disparate tools are being unified and orchestrated by agentic AI.
We saw how that intelligent layer systematically dismantles the architecture of the traditional inbox, replacing manual triage with outcome-centric execution.
And the final stage of this evolution is the complete dissolution of the medium itself. We arrive at a state of pure ambient communication.
Eventually, the very concept of checking email disappears from the human vocabulary. It dissolves into the background layer of your life. Messages flow in continuously from a dozen fragmented channels: Slack, text messages, corporate portals, legacy emails.
Your ambient agents ingest all of them, unifying the disparate data into a single cohesive context layer. Routine actions are taken automatically, computations run silently, and you, the human orchestrator, Only engage with the system when your unique judgment is explicitly required.
To truly internalize this shift, we have to look at the new mental model this architecture demands. We have to explicitly contrast the old world with the new world for everyone listening.
Let's do it.
In the old world, email is a physical digital destination. It is a place you go. It is an app you open on your phone or your desktop.
In the new world, communication is a continuous ambient stream that your agents manage invisibly around you.
In the old world, messages are objects. They are things you manually read and interpret.
In the new world, messages are triggers. They are catalysts that initiate autonomous action.
In the old world, replies are chores. They are things you write.
In the new world, replies are outcomes. They are artifacts your system generates based on your overarching intent.
It is a complete inversion of the dynamic between human and machine. The progression formula for how we communicate and work is finalized. We are not moving from a cluttered inbox to a better, cleaner inbox. We aren't moving to a smarter inbox with AI summaries.
No. The true architectural progression is the inbox, evolving into an agent layer, which finally dissolves into an invisible system. Work simply gets done. There are no tabs left open. There are no deeply nested, threaded conversations to untangle. There are just pure outcomes, orchestrated continuously by your voice, your physical context, and your strategic intent.
It is the realization of the computer that walks beside you. It ceases to be a tool that demands your constant attention and mechanical input, and finally becomes a partner that amplifies your capability. Let's pull all of this together and summarize the sheer scale of the transformation we've mapped out today for you, the listener.
It's a lot to take in.
It is. We started by tearing down the myth of linear technological evolution. GUI, touch, and voice aren't in a relay race to replace each other. They're actively fusing together, unified by the continuous context window of agentic AI.
We explored how this intelligent, invisible layer fundamentally breaks the legacy concept of passive software, turning waiting, deterministic systems into active, reasoning collaborators that cross application silos effortlessly.
We then took that architectural framework and stress-tested it against the most stubborn artifact of modern work, the email inbox. We saw the mechanical breakdown of message-centric workflows and how they will be systematically replaced by outcome-centric execution engines.
We detailed how ambient agents will parse intent, run complex analyses, and execute tasks autonomously, only surfacing the highest-level strategic decisions for human approval via the priority stream.
We highlighted how sensor fusion and platforms leveraging edge-processed voice are creating a frictionless interface for this execution, while touch and GUI wait seamlessly in the background, ready to dynamically assemble the moment visual precision is required.
The absolute core takeaway here, the reason you need to understand this architecture is that your transition from being an operator of machines to an orchestrator of invisible systems means the skills you rely on today are about to be heavily commoditized.
That's the hard truth.
Moving forward, your most valuable asset isn't going to be how fast you can type, or how flawlessly you can navigate a complex software menu, or how quickly you can clear out an inbox. Your ultimate value will be the quality of your judgment, the depth of your strategic thinking, and the absolute clarity of the intent you provide to your agents.
However, as we look at this horizon, it raises a profound philosophical question, something for you to mull over long after this deep dive ends. We have spent this entire time marveling at how ambient intelligence and agentic AI will liberate us from the friction of interfaces and the suffocating drudgery of the inbox.
But we must remember that friction often serves a vital biological purpose. Friction forces us to slow down. Friction forces us to think.
That is an incredibly valid point. When you are forced to manually type out a difficult email, the physical slowness of the act gives you time to reconsider your tone. It gives you the space to stumble upon a wildly different, better idea mid-sentence. The inefficiency is where the iteration happens.
If our interface becomes entirely frictionless and invisible, if every interaction is instantly transformed into a perfectly executed outcome before we even have time to fully process the input, how will that lack of friction affect our human capacity for deep, unstructured, and sometimes wonderfully inefficient thought? Will we lose our patience for the slow, messy, necessary process of discovery when the answers and the executed tasks are constantly walking right beside us, arriving before we even realize we needed them?
It is a fascinating and slightly terrifying paradox. We are engineering the ultimate vehicle for human productivity, but in doing so, we might inadvertently remove the very friction that gives the journey its meaning. It takes us right back to that steering wheel we talked about at the very beginning of this journey. When the car drives itself perfectly and you are elevated to a passenger simply dictating the destination, what do you actually do with your hands? What do you do with your mind during the ride? It is something to seriously think about as you navigate your screens and your inboxes today. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. We will catch you next time.